Can you talk through your understanding of who and what Hamas is, its history, and the governing ideology of this group?
Well, Hamas, in a way, quite easy to understand because they say what their ambitions are. They say what their beliefs are. They've said it from their governing charter onwards. And you also have the advantage with Hamas that they, as it were, in trying to understand them, is that they tend to do what they say and act on what they believe. The primary aim of Hamas is to destroy the state of Israel and then see. They're not an unusual group, sadly. The bit of it that is hard for some people to understand, I think, is that they really do mean what they say, and that they really do mean what they say they want to do. And I give a number of examples in the book of this, but I mean the most uh, obvious is the case of Yahya Sinwar, the Hamas leader, who is generally regarded as having orchestrated and arranged the 7th of October. We know a fair amount about him because he was in prison in Israel in the 2000s for murdering Palestinians in Gaza, and he was released in the prisoner swap he's one of the more than 1,000 Palestinian prisoners inside Israel who was released in a swap for Gilad Shalit, the abducted Israeli soldier. And Yahya Sinwar, in prison in Israel, talked to, among others, a dentist who ended up saving his life because Yahya Sinwar had a brain tumor, and this dentist identified this and actually sent him to the hospital. And the Israelis famously removed the tumor and saved Sinwar's life. But this dentist used to speak to him in the prison, not very regularly, and has related, not least to the New York Times, his conversations with Sinwar. And Sinwar said in one of those conversations, he said, at the moment, you, Israel, are strong, but one day you'll be weak, and then I'll come. And that's what he did.
Is it a hatred of Israel, or is it a hatred of Jews? Is it on the level of nations or the level of religion?
Both. It's both. I mean, it originates from a religious mindset, but it's, of course, political as well. I mean, the Hamas Charter, of course, some people sort of think the Hamas Charter is of no significance, and I often notice this sleight of hand that people do. Again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Forget everything other than the most important basic things. But the Hamas Charter, among other things, quotes the hadith that the end times will not come until all of the rocks and the trees shout out, "Oh Muslim, there's a Jew behind me, come and kill him." And that is so. Hamas is both obviously anti-Israeli, obviously, and anti-Jewish, obviously. It's and by the way, I mean, one of the many painful stories I tell in the book, but is of the fact that so many of the people in the communities that they attacked, it's not as if there'd be a right community to attack and a wrong community to attack, but that many of the communities they attacked were communities which deeply, deeply dreamed of the idea of living in peace with their Palestinian neighbors. There's a woman whose name has become relatively famous certainly is famous inside Israel, Vivian Silva, who was a peace activist who spent every weekend driving Gazan children from the border to, if they had very rare medical needs that could not be seen attention to inside Gaza, would drive them to Israeli hospitals. And she spent every weekend doing that. Worked for all of the sort of left-wing peacenik organizations in Israel. And for a while after the 7th, her neighbors and others thought that she had been taken captive into Gaza, and actually there was a hostage poster for her, and there were appeals by the various peacenik organizations for Hamas to hand her over, but it turned out she'd been burned alive in her home, and this wasn't discovered for quite a long time because there was so little DNA left of her that it was very hard to identify the remains as being hers. So there were a lot of people in the Gaza envelope, as it's called in Israel, in the area around Gaza, who would have been the people who wanted to live peacefully with the Gazans someday. And there's a certain, among the many, it's not an irony, but just among the sort of pains of the day is that so overwhelmingly these are the people that Hamas brought hell to.